So here, I'm talking about looking for rust. You have to be careful because there's going to be different leaf spots that can be mistaken for leaf rust or southern rust. So make sure you're pulling the leaf down to actually look, because just from that backdrop of the light behind it, it could have looked like rust, but you pull that down and that was leaf speckling. Again, looking like suspect here, but looking closer, there's some gray leaf spot, but again, look at all that. It's just leaf speckling. It's physiological. So what you're looking for are the pustules that pop out of the leaf, as you see right there. So pull that leaf down towards you again, look closer, look for those raised pustules. You kind of have that halo around them a lot of times too, that make them a full lesion. And we do have pustules on both sides of this leaf, but because of the color, the distribution of the pustules on the leaf, as well as the timing of the year, I just took this video yesterday, indicate this is southern rust. But that's why it is very harder earlier in the year to distinguish between southern rust and common rust, because some of the characteristics we use to differentiate between them, it's not always as clear cut as you'd like it to be. But again, the majority of the pustules are on one side of the leaf, not the other. And so I'm going to show you another one now. Here we go. So these are my research plots. This is one of my untreated checks. And I'm showing you here, this is diploidea leaf streak, that large lesion with those pepper-like structures that are pycnidia. And the ends of the lesions are not perfectly rounded as if you would expect it if it was northern corn leaf blight. Northern corn leaf blight's more cigar-shaped. I'll show you some pictures of that after this. Here's the smaller lesions you're seeing are gray leaf spot, beginning stages of gray leaf spot. And so again, just a video to kind of show how you need to be walking in to be looking for diseases. And then that was one hybrid, and this is a different hybrid. And again, here you see a lot of that physiological leaf speckling, that very tiny indentation. And then the rest of what's on that leaf, though, is the gray leaf spot. That leaf speckling can look similar to cribularia, which I'll also show you pictures of. But again, always pull that leaf down to see, to really kind of differentiate, are you looking at a disease or a physiological leaf speckling? And so mixed in with that speckling is the beginnings of gray leaf spot. Okay, so the next one, decline whoever's trying to call me from California right now. All right, this is the next one. Another example of looking for rust now. You see just a lot of spots and speckling when you're looking up, but again, you got to look close and start to look for that pattern that catches your eye, where all the spots are close together, clustered together. And so again, pulling that leaf down, looking at more closely. You see one side of the leaf not really showing pustules here, showing the outline of them though, turning the leaf over, and then bam, there's those pustules. This one's a cleaner version of southern rust because it is showing that more characteristic, all the pustules on one side versus the other side being pretty clean, not having very many pustules pop on the opposite side. But again, that pattern is there where they're clustered together, and here it's also more orange. Of course, that first example I showed you was a little bit darker in color. It was probably just older. So again, too random looking at that. You pull it down and you see all that leaf speckling. I don't know what it is, but I have gotten more calls on that leaf speckling this year, and I'm not sure if that's maybe a trend going forward with some of our hybrids or just the environmental situation we've had this year. But I did want to just kind of show a lot of that. And I've got one more video on kind of ID. I believe this is the right one. So here, I want to point out the spotting on the stem. And this is actually one of my better fungicide treatment plots, but showing that fungicide doesn't necessarily clean up spots on the stem, especially if it's not due to disease. And that's the case in this instance because this is actually purple leaf sheath. So see how I pull back that outer sheath and that discoloration doesn't go into the stalk, because this is where pollen has fallen down in there, and you have saprophytic fungi such as yeast and fusarium species or bacteria that grow on that pollen or other particulate matter that lodges between the stalk and the leaf sheath, and that's what causes that discoloration, but it won't actually cause harm. And so again, not to be confused with, say, Physioderma brown spot. So again, here I see these spots across all of my plots due to the hybrid I have, and just that the pollen grain has fallen down between that, but it is just superficial. Again, when you're trying to decide whether something's purple leaf sheath or an actual stalk issue, make sure you kind of peel it back. Okay, and so from that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, if I can figure out how to on my phone. All right, stop share. Are there any questions about what I went over so far? No questions? All right, now I'm going to share screen.
Heather, I think there was a question from someone about the leaf spotting. They were asking if that was some sort of a mosaic or a virus.
No, so far the speckling is what they're kind of referring to. And so far, no, we've not characterized an actual causal agent to that speckling. It's very much, again, we haven't pinpointed if it's the hybrid, if it's a mix between the hybrid and the environment. I have, for some reason though, I have seen less speckling on some of my best fungicide applications at tasseling. So I'm still not quite sure what that's about. So, but yeah, we're not seeing that it is an actual pathogen right now. That's why we're really just referring to physiological leaf speckling. So I do want to point out, so on utcrops.com, if we go there, you know, just from the very home page, you can go to your corn section, and go down to diseases. Unfortunately, I apologize, I do not have my corn sections up on our field guide site as I plan to this season, but I will get them up before next season. But right here is one of the good resources, corn diseases in Tennessee. It's just a 8-slide presentation that's got some really good images. So again, there's that gray leaf spot I showed in the video, some still pictures early on leaf spotting where they're smaller. As they start to elongate, they're bordered by the veins. And so this is the same hybrid. Here's a different hybrid here where you can see it's still similar, those rectangular lesions, but looks slightly different. Again, continuous corn under irrigation and a highly susceptible hybrid, you're more likely to see this. And then you do have now northern corn leaf blight. These are much larger lesions. They're not bordered by the veins. And with that too, I want to share. So this picture, that same background picture, this is where it's of course progressed and those lesions have coalesced across the leaf and looks pretty bad, versus looking at just an individual lesion. Again, comparing this to that leaf streak, the diploidea leaf streak lesions that I've been seeing the diploidea leaf streak the last 3 years, and now actually even getting ready for this presentation, going back to older images, realize I was calling diploidea leaf streak lesions northern corn leaf blight in some years past. And so we might actually in our area see more, diploidea leaf streak lesions than we actually do northern corn leaf blight. Again, it's more cigar shaped. This is the northern corn leaf blight. And you don't necessarily get that peppered structure, and there's usually more yellowing discoloration with them if it's the diploidea leaf streak instead of the northern corn leaf blight. And again, because that northern corn leaf blight likes it a little bit cooler, which is why we don't usually see it that often in Tennessee, or when I do truly see it in Tennessee, it never progresses very much. Where the diploidea leaf streak, similarly, I've not seen it to progress a lot, but in my continuous corn trials, I am seeing more of it this year. Again, you can have more than one issue going on when you are helping diagnose corn issues, so always keep that in mind. And then to get back to the two rusts, and it is important early in the season to make this distinction, because if you have common rusts, we're not going to recommend spraying because it's rare, it's going to rarely cause yield loss. Versus, and so common is when you should have these pustules on both sides of the leaf. Think common, both sides of the leaf. Or southern rust, again, those raised pustules should be on the majority of one side of the leaf and very few on the other. And again, comparing them side by side. The distribution can give you sometimes the best distinction between them. Southern rust will be more clustered together versus the common rust more separated apart. And zooming in on those lesions also, where are we at here? Under a microscope. So again, this kind of over on the left, you have larger pustules spaced out more, the common rust, versus smaller pustules clustered closer together, kind of on the right. And so some of you, if you do have, and again though, if you don't have the two to differentiate each other, it's hard to say, well, are those large or are those small? And so this year, at the beginning of the season, when I got a sample in of both common and southern rust, it was nice to take that picture. And going down further, I thought this here, I wanted to show this. This is an example of a bad picture. It's blurry, it's not in focus. I would not be able to tell you anything about this picture. And it happens, I get it, but that's why I checked the picture and said, oh, this is terrible, and took another one. And a lot of times I put my finger in the picture to make it focus. That's what I find is easiest. Put my finger on the leaf and it focuses on my finger, so then the leaf is in focus. And so this is the underside of the leaf. Little helpful here, but I still wouldn't know whether to say this is curvularia, a rust, or maybe even the leaf speckling. I really need you to get the other side of the leaf also. And so then there, pulling the leaf down, putting it in the sun, putting it on the other side, this is the other side of that same leaf, clearly then can say, oh yeah, that's definitely southern rust. And so again, just to give you an illustration of good picture taking versus bad picture taking, and again, why both sides of the leaf to get that image are important to help identify it. And so again, going back to some of these other pictures, one of the ones I like to show, let's see, which one do I want to do? Yeah, so here, curvularia, it looks, again, when you actually pull it down out of the sun, it'll look the same. And this is curvularia. So when we flip this over, it looks exactly the same. No different. And versus that leaf speckling, how I showed you when that you flip that leaf over, you can see that it's just these kind of indented gray specklings. And again, so here's that example of the speckling. From this picture, I'd say, well, I don't know, you definitely have gray leaf spot in there, but maybe you also have curvularia or rust. I wouldn't really know until we look at the other side of the leaf, pull it down, pull it out of the sun. That's the other side of the leaf. It actually doesn't look near as bad, right? Comparing that picture to that picture, but it's the exact same leaf, because that leaf speckling with the sun behind it really looks terrible. But really the majority of the only issue going on with this leaf are, again, those smaller gray leaf spot lesions. And so again, making sure you're examining both sides of the leaf are important. And so I'm going to try to wrap up in 5 minutes. I'm going to go kind of quickly. So some of these slides I actually pulled from my Middle Tennessee Grain Conference presentation, which talked about surfactant issues, etc., that can cause abnormal corn ears and the management of it, as well as actual corn ear rots. And I also went into some diseases. And so you can have a lot of different things going on, you know, arrested ears, banana-shaped ears, bouquet ears, ear rots and diseases, ear stunting, tip dieback, all kinds of things going on. And the causes of these, though, a lot of the times aren't necessarily diseases. You can have environmental issues caught during certain growth stages that will cause these issues, as well as nutrient deficiencies, insect damage, as well as the misapplication of chemicals. And so here, beer can syndrome is usually cold shock, sometime between V6 and V10, as we did have a colder spring, but it didn't get as cold into our corn season as it can further north. Also, you have arrested ears. And so with that, a lot of times that can be some research that was done. If you spray, say, a fungicide or something with a surfactant, NIS, just short for a non-ionic surfactant, applied at V8, V18, VT, R1, R2, it was safe. But outside of those time periods, V10, V12, V14, V16, they found issues. And specifically, the non-ionic surfactant containing this, what they call APE for short, caused the maximum damage at the V10 and V14 application. And so again, that's that time period that if you are seeing abnormal ears, you want to make sure you ask what, if anything, had been sprayed during that time period to help you identify that. And so moving from that just into fungicide applications real quick. Most of you all have seen some of this data before and know the main reason if someone wants to apply a fungicide on corn, the application timing is tassel to brown silk. Because on average across multiple hybrids and environments and disease pressures, that gives you your highest rate of return, your bushels per acre over your non-treated check. Those earlier applications just aren't paying. Although I'm further investigating, say, a V10 to V12 application when a grower with their ground rig might be able to get over their corn still to see if that would be worth it at all. We just don't have enough data to really say one way or the other yet on that last stage to go over it with a ground rig, but we are investigating it. And of course, adding an early and a tassel shot together, you're not adding an additional bushel to that standard application. So, and in additional to, the disease pressure really influences that response to a fungicide. Again, this is from regional data, a lot of data points. When we had less than 5% disease, we only saw 3 bushel per acre increase from a fungicide. If we had more than 5% disease, we have 11 bushel per acre increase. And again, that's why disease pressure and understanding what hybrid is out there and their disease package is really important. And I'm just gonna skip to the break-even slide here. Again, showing the price of corn and then looking at their price of application. This is application cost plus the chemical, you know, and I know some people might, I don't know if they're even getting necessarily a full $3 per bushel this year, but you need, here's that, like if you're gonna get at least 4 bushel per acre response from that fungicide, you know, this is where they're at least breaking even if they fall within this range of their application. But again, having to use an airplane and then the chemical costs can sometimes already push you out of this $12 to $18 range. And so that's what I go to a lot. And then I'm going to wrap up just with a couple more videos. So I'm going to stop sharing here and share on my phone again. Let's see, screen, start now. All right, you see my background. Back to this. Here's a 2-minute video. This is a fungicide efficacy trial going on right now. I took this video yesterday, and so showing you differences since we can't walk it together. But this is a highly susceptible gray leaf spot hybrid, and this area has obviously been no-till corn, under irrigation, and a high susceptible variety for almost 8 years. So walking into that plot, you see the bottom leaves have already started to kind of senesce, but when they were still up, you could see that there was disease on them. Gray leaf spot is the majority of what you're seeing. And then you look up into the canopy too, you see, again, just as much gray leaf spot. And you pull that leaf down, but some of that too is physiological leaf spot. But right there, that could be the start of curvularia leaf spot. It's not southern rust, based on not having any pustules on either side of the leaf. And then there's the physiological leaf spot mixed in with the gray leaf spot. But you kind of see all the speckling and spots going on in this non-treated check. Again, so just kind of a snapshot of that. I'm going to walk now quickly to one of my better fungicide treatments. And this is actually a treatment that's it had an in-furrow application of a fungicide and a tassel application of fungicide, and that's why it is the cleanest. But already from the outside right there, you can see very green, very few spots. And that's not to say it's absolutely absent of disease. There is some gray leaf spot in here. Fungicide applications aren't ever really going to be 100%, especially in the disease pressure I have this. But see, even in a fungicide treated spot, some of the leaves here have already, started to senesce and drop off. But looking up in that remaining canopy, you can see how much more green it is. Very much reduced leaf spots, significantly reduced. And so again, that's what you would expect to see with a good fungicide application. And many of the products we have right now give similar control or management of gray leaf spot. But again, not to say there's not going to be, and seeing there's some speckling there too, even on this fungicide treated plot. Again, why it's really not disease. So I'm going to stop there because I think I'm probably already maybe 6 minutes over. I don't really remember when I started.
Well, thank you, Heather.